once in a while, some of the areas get a tiny bit of summer rain. And so what you got, there are the mountains in the background, and there's the flats, and those little white dots, there are also some little orange dots, those are all bulbs. So that's kind of what it's like when you get to one of these areas of Upper Nostradamus. Next slide. Lots of different pollinators. So, there's like on the left, that's a long-tongued fly with this enormous little nose going down into a bulb. And then this hairy looking thing is a monkey beetle, which they hang out on a lot of the Moraeas, and they treat them like bachelor pads. Like the chicks really dig the way those flowers look. And so the guys hang out there and the girls come by, they have a party, they eat a lot of pollen, they get pollen all over them, and then they spread it to other flowers. So the Moraeas are adapted to different sorts of pollinators, but it turns out that honeybees are the ones that are things that really, really like these flowers a lot, as Gary and I discovered when we grew them here in California. Let's go to the next slide. Here are a few species. Moraea aristata, very, very rare, just from one location. Fortunately, it grows in cultivation, so it's still around. Next one. Atropunctata, kind of a little darker with little brown spots and stuff like that. Next one. Gigandra, a larger one, purple with a blue and kind of a really shiny black center. Next one. Moraea lupseri, very rare, again, from just one location where it was barely rescued from being removed for a quarry. And in the middle, see it's hairy black in the middle, and it's translucent green jade color. The light shines through it from behind. It's a really weird looking flower, but it's kind of, and it's another one that's easy to grow, and so it's been rescued from extinction. Moraea neopavonia on the right and Tulbagensis on the left. These have now been combined into one official species. I think they're different enough, they ought to be two. So I'm still calling them two different things. Let's go to the next one. The tripetala, relatively more common, really stretched out little tiny things, but apparently honeybees pollinate this one as well. Let's go to the next one. Well, that's not it. Okay, there we go. Okay, Moraea villosa. So this is the most variable species. You'll notice it's got nice, color in the middle. It's got what Gary and I call the eye, which is that colored spot. And then it's got a contrasting color around it. So let's go. Next slide. There's another one. Next slide. Lot of big variety. Let's go next slide. So that one's a one that's completely white on the tepals. Next slide. There's one that's kind of purple with this iridescent green eye going on there. Next slide. There's a blue and purpley one. Next slide. The kind of mauve colored one, which has been interesting for breeding with other stuff. Next slide. Pinky one that I got one time. Next slide. Yeah, that one. Look at these style crests in the middle. See, they look like bull's horns. Like, what is going on with this flower? It's really, really interesting. Next slide. Oh, that one. Okay, I really like the blue eyes on that one, so I called it Bonnie. That's my wife's name. I thought she'd be a lot more impressed by that than she actually was. But anyway, let's go to the next one. Oh yeah, that magenta with blue is a really, really neat one. There's been we're doing some fun work with that one. Let's go to the next one. Okay, and also a bunch of other species. So with lines on them, with spots. This one down here, this almost black one called Moraea lurida. There's a yellow one. There are a couple of yellow species. So there's all sorts of material that we can work with. Both they're fun to grow, but also we can put together to try to do different things with. Let's go to the next slide. Okay, and then there are a whole bunch more species that I can find pictures of, but I cannot obtain anywhere. So, if you have contacts, I don't want to do anything illegal, but if there's people who have it legally and want to share or something like that, I'm trying to find people just because I want to get these things into the breeding program or people who are pollen collectors, that sort of thing would be helpful. Let's go to the next slide. Okay, yes, all right. So I really like the color red. So found this on iNaturalist, it's a red one. That's really neat. And so it's at this place called Bartholomew's Cliff, which is a farmhouse and a working farm that also has a section of Rhinoceros that's been preserved. And so I looked it up. They've got a guest house that you can stay in. And that's down at the bottom down here. And then where these guys are is the green docks that you see up there. And that's about 1.5 miles. And there are little roads, like little dirt roads that go up there. And if you stay there, you can borrow a dirt bike, just a bicycle with the knobby tires. And you can go explore the reserve by yourself. You can just go wander around. It's like, dang, this is great. So talked my wife into doing vacation in South Africa, and we stayed at this place, and I got the bike. And I was thinking, this is great, a mile and a half, I can do that on a bike. I'm gonna be there in 20 minutes. This is gonna be absolutely awesome. So get there, get the bike, it's all working out. Next slide. Yeah, there's the road. Okay, and furthermore, as it gets further along, it turns out to be a Jeep track. It's all cobbles there, so you're just riding over cobbles all the time. And so picture doing that like I'm so sore after this thing. It was really, really painful. Anyway, so fine. So I'm pedaling through this, I'm doing all that stuff. Let's go to the next slide. Oh, yeah, here, okay, so this is, there you see again, Quartz Mountains and the flat land and all that sort of stuff, and here's another one of the roads. The water table is very high in the spring, it's right under the ground, and so when there are these ruts, it fills up with water, so picture riding a bike through this and trying to do this stuff. And by the way, the water goes all the way out to the horizon. It looks like it doesn't because that's the reflection of the mountains there, but that's actually water all the way out there. And in fact, if you could try clicking on the slide, this is actually a video, and you maybe, there we go. Okay. So what I want you to notice is the plot of this. So this is me. If you can hear the sound, this is me whining about what it's like, and there's this water, and what I'm going to do with this. And luckily the flies didn't bite, but they wanted the salt, and so they're like crawling around on my neck the whole time, and all that sort of stuff. And all right, and that's fine. Let's go to the next slide. It was okay because the flowers were there, exactly where they were supposed to be. So let's go to the next slide. Some of them are kind of more orangey. Next slide. Some of them, they've got these patterns on the back where it's red, it's orange with red dots and stuff like that. Let's go to the next slide. These really bright blue eyes on them that were just gorgeous. And yes, I got some pollen, and you check out the pollen bag. And the pollen didn't work, probably because it spent 2 weeks traveling with me before I got it home. So I still want to get pollen in these things somehow, but that's a whole separate discussion. So, all right, so I got all these species. I was really having fun time with them, but I couldn't get the other species. And I really liked having new stuff every year to be able to see what, like have something to look forward to. And so what I did was I started building raised beds and then just crossing these things together every year. And so I'm raising now about 300 crosses a year. I'm building one new bed every year to hold the crosses. So that's what the bed looks like. I've done about 16 beds at this point. And I'm making this greenhouses. So just a little bit of lattice work, window screen on the side that keeps the bees out so I can do all the pollination. And I'm just building a new one of these every year, and I've been going along. Let's go to the next slide. Yeah, so my one of the beds really works nicely. That's what it looks like. They do not look like this most of the time. This one's overcrowded at this point. It starts to decline after that. There are all sorts of problems. But at the peak, I think Gary took this photo actually. At the peak, that's what it looked like. So what am I trying to do with the breed? I'm not a botanist, so I'm kind of trying random things to see what happens. I want bright colors. I want weird patterns. I want really truly red flowers still. And I'm trying to get bigger flowers and stuff like that. So let me show you what's happening so far. So first of all, let's mix a purple one and an orange one and see what happens. Next slide. Oh, that's interesting. So it's mostly orange, but it's got a little bit of color overlaying on it. So that's kind of fun. All right, let's go to the next one. Okay, so let's take two of those. So these both have orange and purple parents together. Let's cross them together and see what happens. Oh, dang, it turned yellow. And with this really neat zebra pattern in the middle. Now, unfortunately, that flower fades after a day. It just turns to cream color. But I'm working toward trying to get more persistent yellows. Let's go to the next slide. What about crossing these two together? Let's see what happens. Next slide. Ooh, cool patterns. Gary came over to my place the first year this bloomed, and we were going, oh my goodness, what are we doing with this? What's going on? So both of these were important. One is the spots. I'll come back to the spots. The other one on the left side, notice there's kind of this smoky ring around the eye, kind of dots and weird color and stuff. That turns out to hold true when you make additional crosses with it. So I've got a whole line going now of stuff that has that smoky stuff in the middle. Next slide. So see, like there is a purple one with the smoke around it. Next slide. That's a sibling of that same one. Next slide. So that one's kind of orangey. Next one. Ooh, that one's yellowish with this stuff with really green eyes. Next slide. Ooh, that one's kind of a different shade of orange. Next slide. Ooh, that really has weird stuff going on around the eye. That's getting really, really interesting. Next slide. Ooh, there's another one with this really iridescent eye going on. Unfortunately, that one's sterile. I'm still trying. Next slide. Yeah, with almost white with these gigantic eyes on it. Next slide. And yeah, weird color patterns now. Next slide. Oh, that one. Yeah, yeah, kind of a raspberry color with red in the center and blue. That I just love this one. Next slide. Okay, so let's try putting together a purple one and a pale orange one. Let's see what happens. Next slide. Interesting. Okay, so there's kind of an orange background with a purple sheen over it, and it's pointy, and so that's kind of interesting. Next slide. So what if I take that and I cross it with this magenta one? Let's see what happens. Oh, that's kind of fun. So magenta and sort of reddish on the back and the bright blue eyes and stuff like that. Like I was really, really happy with this one. Let's go to the next slide. Okay, so now let's try doing stuff with the spots. So this is about the only named variety of Moraea that's out there. It's something called Zoe. It was discovered by a guy in New Zealand. It was just growing in a group of Moraea species. So apparently this is a genetic characteristic that's hidden in there that comes out occasionally. Next slide. Okay, yeah, so a picture by a gentleman named Colin Patterson Jones. He took that one in South Africa in the wild. So as you can see, this is an occasional pattern that's emerging. So I started trying to cross these things together, see what I could do. So let's go to the next slide. Okay, so let's take one of those spotty ones. Let's cross it with that one that has a few spots, and let's see what happens. Oh, that's kind of fun. Now we're getting blue spots on it. Next slide. There's a sibling of it. Next slide. There's an offspring of those two siblings. Let's go to the next slide. A little different spot pattern. Let's go to the next one. Yeah, okay, now I'm getting white with some spots on it. Let's go to the next slide. Yeah, another white one with spots all over the tepals. Next slide. That one, no eyes now. You know, we just got kind of an orange thing and then the blue spots around it, or purple spots. Next one. Yeah, that one looks like watercolors. It looks like an impressionist painting, the way they're kind of blurring with each other. Next slide. That one's more streaks rather than spots, so there's kind of an interesting possibility around veins and stuff like that. Next slide. Nice spot pattern just close to the eye with a white background. This one's really pretty in person. Next slide. Yellow with tiny little dots on it. I really like that one as well. Next slide. That one kind of interesting color pattern. Next one. Yeah, these very intense spots now. The next one. Ooh, blue rather than purple spots. So that was really neat. This is another one that is not fertile, unfortunately, but I'm keeping trying. Then yellowish with the purple spots on it. Next slide. And then just spots where the eyes should be. So that was really interesting to see. Next slide. Okay, let's try mixing the spots with the colors, right? This should work. Put these together. I'm going to get spots on an orange background. This is going to be like the best flower ever. So I cross them together and I get that. Because the spots turn out to be recessive as far as I can tell. Again, I'm not a botanist, but that's what it looks like. So, okay, next slide. Let me take two of those. They both have a spotted parent. Let's put them together and see what happens. Oh, recessive genes. It actually works. So, like, this is one of my favorites of all time because it's got the orange, it's got the purple. It's like all a package of all the stuff that I want. So I was really happy with this one. Let's put spots together with orange in another case. Let's see what happens. Next slide. Oh, it turned white. A neat flower though, beautiful, you know, kind of definition to it and stuff like that. So Gary and I've done a lot of work with this one. Next slide. Oh, let's try Lurida. Okay, so this is that one that I showed you earlier was all like that dark magenta. There's another form that's yellow and magenta. So let's put that together with that purple one. I have no idea what's going to happen. Let's see what goes on like that. With these really, really dark kind of ring in the center of the flower and heavy, heavy veins. Next slide. You know, or this color pattern is another one coming out of that sort of cross. Next slide. Oh, let's put purple with yellow. Let's see what that does. Next slide. That's interesting. Now we're getting concentric rings around the eye. So that yellow one doesn't transmit the yellow color, but it breaks the eye of the flower that it's breeding with, so you get concentric circles. So that became a new theme. Next slide. Ooh, let's try for all sorts of different rings in the middle of the eye. Next one. Like that. Next one. Different set of patterns. Next one. That one, you know, aqua and orange together. There's one that's yellow and blue. That's like, you know, if you're a Berkeley grad, you know, it's the, then this one. Next slide. So, spots instead of the eyes again. Next one. Yeah, rings with different contrasting colors. Next slide. Oh, no eye at all, but a ring of dots around the eye where the eye should have been. Next slide. And then rainbow effects, where you're getting a bunch of things blended together. Next slide. Okay, then I've also been trying for red, so I'm starting with some magenta things. Next slide. Sort of brick colored. It's not really that red in person. Next slide. Kind of more sort of mauve-y. Next slide. It's almost red, like I can convince myself, just like the guys who read the tall bearded iris and they say they're red, that's exactly what I'm doing, like it's almost there and I'm gonna convince myself that it's red. Next slide, yeah, that's kind of reddish too, next one. Okay, oh, this one I think is almost red, like in the right light, I can almost convince myself, but it's still not as good as that one that I've got the pictures of. So I'm still keeping to try on that, next slide. Okay, the latest stuff I've been getting, really strong contrasting colors around the eye. This one on the right, I like. This one, the style crests you see are dark purple, so it's contrasting, kind of like what you get sometimes with irises. One on the left, some yellow going with the green, which I think is really nice. Next slide. Yeah, wild spots on the left, like an ink, like you had an old fountain pen and it leaked. On the right side, I just love the symmetry of the markings there. It's almost hypnotic to stare at the thing.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what's been happening lately. Next slide. Okay, so those are my pictures. I've got a blog where I document all this stuff. So every cross that blooms gets photographed and put up on the blog. So that's where you can find it. If you want the slides or if you want seeds, we actually have seeds for distribution today. So we're gonna get seeds if you want them. But also if you want to try for specific things, contact me at that email address, mikecmace@gmail.com. Put the C or it goes to some other guy. I'd be glad to supply it. My goal is to not be one of those gardeners who eventually expires and then their collection is lost. I want to share it now proactively so you guys can have it. So I want to infect you all with the enthusiasm for this. There are several commercial sources for the species. If you want to get them, they're great people, definitely buy from them. I do want to find somebody who can help to collect pollen in South Africa legally. And so if you have any contacts there or any ideas or suggestions on how to do it, please speak to me because I haven't been able to figure out that one yet. With that, that's what I wanted to share. Let's bring up Gary.
Okay, I just want to mention that there are 3 people on Zoom outside of this room right now, right, Mary Beth? And right now, the audio is working for them. Yeah. However, the remote slide advance won't work for Gary. So he has a lot of slides. So
I can do the same thing, Mike did.
Okay, you're all right with that?
It's
All
the
right.
next slide, that's fine.
Okay, just want to get it out there.
Next slide. I'm Garry Knipe, and I'm mostly a Pacific Coast iris breeder. And for about the past 25 years, I've been working on blue iris on the Pacific Coast. Next slide.
Gary.
Yes. Sure, no problem.
What's the name of that?
It's a Pacific Coast iris hybrid. Next slide. So I've been working to get in various colors of blue. It's been hard going and a lot of work, but slowly I'm getting more of them coming out. And there's usually something wrong with them, like they died in the second year. But next slide. That's what I've been doing mostly. But it's been a tough getting good results. So about 13, next slide. These are some of the things I started with. There's a couple of Lewis and Adele Lawyer that were up in the Oakland Hills, and they supplied me with stuff. Lewis was a professional hybridizer, doing things like making sure all the peas came right at the same time. And so when he retired, he had lots of experience with hybridizing, and he got a lot of some of this blue going locally here, and he gave me a lot of seeds and was very generous. Next slide. When I was up there one time talking to the lawyers, they said, "Oh, here, take this packet of seeds and scatter it around your yard, and you'll have bloom starting right around now and going all the way through winter." And so there's some seed for Moraea polystacia. That's come from that. If you're any interested in that, that'd be great.
Sorry, for the interruption, we'll resume in a second.
Trying to get the slides up for the Zoom audience.
It would be the same as before. I don't get it.
I think there were just 2 copies up.
Five next. Okay, next now.
Yeah, but it's not.
So they gave me some seed for polystacia, and it's been amazing. It starts blooming. It's starting to bloom right now in my backyard, and it goes through all fall, all winter. Next, here's in the sidewalk strip just out in front of my house. They grow like this, and they just keep sending more and more flowers out.
Without irrigation,
Excuse me?
is that out without irrigation?
Without irrigation, I occasionally, if it hasn't been raining, give it a little water. They're close to some trees that I irrigate a little bit. They start to have water anytime in the fall.
On those, everything else will fill the other line, so this one is used to getting water.
But if you wait a little longer, they just won't bloom until you start watering. Next. Move the other way. They also told me that there's this beautiful Moraea flower called Avrostata. That they didn't have any of it right now, but they've grown it in the past and said, you ought to look into it, because we know, we both love blooms. So, I kept that in mind next. If you look online, you can find things like this. Great eye candy, but I never saw it on sale at Yamagami's, and never got around to doing anything until next. This guy, Mike Mace, came to the Irish Society and did a presentation on Moraea. And next, he invited me over to see his collection next. And boy, it was quite a show. Next, you get a little closer, you say, oh, look at all those blue things in there. Teal colors, all sorts of great colors. Next, I was hooked. Couldn't help but saying, my God, look at the blues in here. I'm struggling on the Pacific Coast. I was getting a little bit of blue. Here it is looking at me in the face saying, oh, well, here's blue if you want it. So thank you, Mike. And Mike got me started here. He's provided an immense amount of material for me. He's allowed me to go into his beds and make crosses as I see fit. Because he's got so much stuff. There's no way he can even evaluate everything. So they're very similar, some of the Moraea. As the iris are, there's like the falls, which they call outer tepals. There's the standards, which they call inner tepals. And I'm not sure what they call these, but we still call them styles. And the styles is where all the genetics takes place. Next. One back. Some of them don't have the standards. They're kind of these little vestigial things, where other ones do have it. Next. Moraea atropunctata's got a lot of dots in it, and some interesting colors, but for me, next, I like the ones that have blue in them. You can see that these little inner tepals, they're very small. They kind of look like a sword with a blade that comes out and a handle and a little hand guard. This one shows it really easily because there's so much space in this flower. Next. But the ones that have the blue are just really sweet to me. This one's got a very black center, and then this little sliver of brilliant blue. Next. All the ones that have blue in them, I think are great. This one, in fact, has not only blue on the outer tepals, but also on the inner tepals, there's some blue. And so for me, blue is the reason why I'm here. And so I'm looking to do lots of experimenting with these, so here's the Velosa patterns. Mike's gotten a lot of these all from different locations, and there's lots of patterns in them. I'm just going to go through a couple of my favorites next. Some nice blue there with yellow on the inside. There's a whole pot full of them. Next, kind of a pinkish color, a little bit off, but different than all the rest, with very teal eye color. Next, almost teal green on this one. Next, a real dark blue. Next, and then this Velosa Formo is what Mike calls it. Got very nice color, and especially the big outer tepals. It's like a magenta color. Next, there's some that are spotted, but Mike can have all the ones that are spotted with no blue eye on them. But I'll do breeding with it if it's got an eye on blue. Next, here's it showing when you breed these things, you need to go in and take the anthers, and here's Mike going in next. Grabbing off an anther. Next, yeah, that's good. And so that's what contains the pollen. Next, here you get a slight view. This is the anther with pollen on it, and up here is the stigma or stigmatic lip. So when a bee comes in and it gets close to here, if he has any pollen on his back, it gets wiped onto this little flap that sticks down. It's kind of a little bit sticky. And that's what fertilizes the seeds. And then we'll start changing to the seed pod. And we'll start growing seeds containing the genetic material of this flower, plus the pollen that came in. Once the bee gets past that lip, it picks up all this pollen that's on here. Not all of it, but a bit of it. And then heads off to another flower to bring this one's pollen to another place. Next, after you pollinate them, in about 2 months, the seed pods start to dry out and crack, and so you can collect the seeds, which are typically pretty small. Next, plant them, and you get these little tiny threads of green coming out of the ground. And if you're not watching, if you're not aware of it, you might think it's a weed or something, but that's what you want to see. Just these single green leaves coming up. The next year, they'll be much bigger. This is what the corms look like after a couple of years from seed. They're ready to bloom. And next, and this is a pretty big flower here. And it's got blue side. It's fine with me. Next. Mike gave me a bunch of seed. We made some crosses. I planted it in about 2.5 years. 2.5 years later, this is the first batch that I have.
Wow.
And so I'm just going to go through some that I like next. Great color, real orange in the center there with black and white. These are all siblings from the same cross, so there's a lot of variety you can get from just one pot of seeds from the same parents. Next. Next. These are all from the same cross. Next. 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 This is a different cross, but showing like the yellow on the inside and the blue there with almost white around the outside. Next. I throw a little seeds everywhere here and there wherever I find an empty space. And here's a bunch that are coming up in the spring. Next. I like this one a whole lot. The blue, it's not the best lighting on this picture, but if you go to the next slide, you can see the color in here, which is some kind of a blue turquoise. And there's if you get close and really look at it, it really shines. It's almost like a metallic blue flake kind of paint, but it's really quite impressive. Also, back one more. I wanted to point out that here's where the anther is with the pollen, and on some of them, this is where the stigmatic lip is. So if anybody's tempted to grow some of these and say, "Oh, I like that one and I like that one," you can start taking pollen from one and putting it to the other just by grabbing this stamen and dabbing it to the stigmatic lip. Next. Okay, I'm just going to fly through a bunch of slides. Next. Some ones with dots, but it's got a green or blue eye, a little bit on the teal side there. Next. A nice yellow one with a good blue in it. Next. But after a day or two, it's fades out with the yellow to a kind of a light green yellow. More of the same, no, not the same, but all very good. I usually put my seeds into one pot per cross. And unfortunately, the squirrels have a habit of going to the tree next door and getting acorns and bringing them over to the pots, because it's so nice to dig in. And they take the soil from one pot and put it in the other, along with all the seeds that are keeping track of. So I get a little concerned about that for the ones I really care about. So I usually put them under the cage there. Next. So my backyard's got a lot of cages, but being protected from the squirrels typically. Next. But you can only do so much in pots when you have a little bit of space in the garden. Here I took about a 3 square foot patch and just amended the soil slightly. And then took all the leftover seed I had from one year, mixed it all together with a little sand, and scattered that around and raked it in and just watered a little bit. And 2.5 years later, next, that whole patch starts blooming. Next. And I'm going to do a real quick run through some of the favorites from that. I have no idea what the parents are, but it was an effective use of space. Next. There's all sorts of good stuff came out. Next, just keep running through these. Next. A nice yellow one. This yellow doesn't fade hardly at all. So I'm using this and some of Mike's that Mike has yellows that don't fade too. So I'm looking forward to getting some good non-fading yellows, because that's been a problem. Next. Almost like a red color right around there, around the eye. Next. A lot of like the white inside contrasting with this one has black all around it. Orange, the colors are just great. Next. Makes it fun going out in the morning and check to see what's just opened overnight. Next. Next. It's kind of interesting one. I like this one, how it almost looks like a complete circle of blue around the inner part, which is black with a bright orange little line going to separate the two. Next. It also has an orange, more of an orange reverse on the other side. Next. I like this one a lot. I love the colors in the eye, and some of this little bit of green kind of coming through. Next. Really bright colors. Next. More bright colors. Next. Next. This one's been a really good one for me. It's done a whole lot of increasing, and now I have about 30 stems coming up at the same time. The bulbs or forms do offsets, and so this one does pretty quick offsets. So I have quite a bit of this. Next. That's the same thing on a flower that's faded up for about 2 days. Next. More color. Next. Some of them have got real strong stems. This one, it's a whole batch in here. Next. All the same flower, looking down on it. And that was probably there for about 5 years. And I had like 24 or 25 flowers blooming at the same time. Next. Next. But then I go to Michael's house and see what he's been working on. And I go, oh God, how am I gonna stick some pollen with me when I go home and I know what to put that to next. Another one of Mike's that I really like a lot next. One of the things that we have seen is some real unusual kind of stripes in here, like white. If you look real close, it's almost like a silvery white, like a plastic that's really well polished. It's really different next. And another one that's very similar next. And you can see how it's just all these little tubes, but there's like white points and dark points and blue. I like it next. One of the species, calcicola, has got very wide tepals and it provides some nice form for some of the flowers that come out of it next. Next. More of the blue. Yeah. And then here's Gigandra. It's just got such a thin blue thing, so we're trying to make it bigger, but still keeping that really great color next. So all of these are crosses with Gigandra, in this case with Aristata, the white and blue one next. This is another sibling of that. Next. Kind of a nice teal in there now, next. More, a little lighter, yeah. One of Mike's, this one's a pretty big flower. In the wind, it really flaps like a butterfly, kind of. It's really nice. Next. And one volunteered in a section, I don't know how it got there, but this cute one next. Then this is Zoe, the one that the guy in New Zealand came up with. Next. So these are some of the children of it. Next. Some from Mike's house that I really liked a lot. Next. More. I like the black little lines coming off of this one with the blue and the yellow next. It's still blue eye. I have to give it points off for not being as bright blue as I'd like to see. But the little lines and dashes and stuff are kind of interesting next. Getting away from the blue eye, I can't stand it. But Michael liked it. Next. I like this one because it's kind of a reddish brown, orange color with the little fine dots. It showed up on some of my stuff in my hands. Next. That's all Mike's. Next. This is one that came in my yard. Unfortunately, it's almost black. It's a real dark color. But boy, the spots on it. Wow. Next. And here's one that temporarily gained a few spots and dots and hands and stuff while I was visiting. So this is, they're out there in the wild somewhere, and Mike's trying to find something like this, or we'll try to get it ourselves. Yeah. Here's some of the reddish ones that Mike's been working on next. Some kind of pinks and stuff up here next. Pink and more of a brick red kind of green eye on that next. Really nice raspberry color one with a good blue eye. I've taken a lot of seed from this. Next. At my house, in that whole batch of mixed stuff, I saw this one coming out. It looks a little red, so keep an eye on it closely next. And nice contrast. I love the white inside with the black inside that, and orange, and then the black and the blue and the orange and the reddish. Next, and when it opens, it's a little different color. It starts to fade here. It fades more next. Here's one that's only been fading a little bit. Here's one that's faded a whole lot. So it really changes its color. And I wish it would stay a little more interesting than the fully faded one. But it was good enough to cross on here. These are little tags to let me know which cross was on this seed pod and which cross was on this seed pod, which one was there, and so on next. So going back to Moraea and Neopovonia, I guess Gordon Summerfield has a nursery or something in South Africa, and then Mike was able to get one of this, and this is the one that's got the blue, not only on the outer tepals, but also on the inner tepals there. And the inner tepals on this one are relatively wide. And so if I can get more blue by having wider petals, I'll take that too. So next. And this was some batches at Mike's house that I liked how the inner tepal was getting bigger. The Neopovonia itself is a very deep orange, and when you cross it with almost anything, it comes out as a kind of a whitish orange. And it was crossed with Zoe, one of the spotted ones, and not a sign of a spot anywhere. Next. More kind of coming out of that line stuff next. One that we've both been using a lot in our breeding next. The Velosa O, which has got some phenomenal color. A nice bright blue line next. And if you look very carefully and get your binocular, your magnifiers out, there's a little blue right there on the inner tepal, the little tiny sword. And so crossing this one with the other one that's got blue with the wider tepals gives us things like next. There you can see the blue a little better. Next. Here's some of Mike's stuff, and it's got that blue on the inner tepal, so keep going. Next. A couple more Mike's next, coming out of the so next. This is one of my favorites of Mike's coming out. Velosa next. So I took this this one here with the wider tepals in the blue and crossed it with this one with the blue. Got a lot of seeds from that cross. So Michael usually only plants like 15 or 12 seeds per cross because he's got so many crosses. I usually do have less crosses. But plant more seeds of them to see what kind of recessive stuff might pop out. Next, and this is what I get from that cross. The first year it comes out as little blades of grass. Next, but about 2.5 years after planting the seed, I get a whole patch of this stuff. This is in about a 1.5 foot long with 2 little rows. With maybe 80 seeds or something like that. Next, get a little closer, and we'll take a real quick run through some of these ones next. They're all showing the little blue dots. Sometimes it's kind of out on the sword more, sometimes it's in the hand guard. But next, some unusual kind of little slight thing, but almost all of them have that blue there. Next, it's getting bigger than it was on the original one. So next, this might be some spotting that's just starting to come out of one of its grandparents. That Zoe one with lots of big dots and stuff. Next, I like this one a lot. It's got a nice blue patch there. Nice bright blue, yellow inside, black, kind of nice. This one, a little out of focus, but it's got some teal in there. Here's one when you see some unusual color in the bud when it's just starting to show color. Say, okay, I'm going to keep a close eye on that. And I was a little disappointed that it wasn't better, but there was some yellow with some blue. So it just shows some of the variability when you make some crosses like this next. So I guess in 2021, excuse me, I took a section of my front yard here and I covered it with plastic, little 1/2-inch mesh to keep the squirrels from digging in it, because in this section I try to keep all the lines, and I typically from one side to this side, I can squeeze in about 60 or 70 seeds. Some of them, a lot of them don't bloom, don't emerge at all. They don't like this, something about this location. but other ones will do next. So here's a patch. It's about 10 plants. And quite a variety of form and there and color next. This is my favorite, and I'm trying to see, are these blue dots here, or are these still the violet dots that we usually see? I'm not sure, they're starting to turn a little blue, but really got to get them bigger to see what color they are. Next. Some weird color, more yellow in the center. Next. Another one, pretty wide inner tepals, but just a hint of a blue dot in there. A little more green next. So some of those other yellow ones, the yellow fades, but this is one of Mike's that is non-fading yellow. So I'm using this to cross to some of those ones with wider tepals, inner tepals next. Kind of a weird color, but there's blue there, even on the ribs of the style arms. There's a little bit of blue back there. I like it. Not fond of the outer tepal color, but I like the inner part. So next. This was one I knew Mike would like. So the picture, but next, right next to it is one of its siblings. And it's like, my God, what a difference coming out of the same parents. One is all spotted like this with a white eye, and this one's blue eye and violet, and makes you wonder who the parents were next.
Mhm.
And those were the parents.
Mhm.
So you can see where the spotted one came from, but where that normal violet and blue one, you don't see it initially here. But if you look back into the parentages, you can say, oh, well, that's coming from this and that's coming from this, but it sure results in amazingly different ones. I think that's about it next. And so that's kind of the kind of things I like to look at in the spring.